climate action, because this is the one that will unlock the achievement for all others 16 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, of our Agenda 2030 that you voted in 2014. So that looks like commitment to stronger resilience, the ability to adapt to climate-related disasters, integrate into all your policies and planning in your capitals. It also looks like building knowledge and capacity to meet climate change, implementing the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and promoting the ways to raise your ability to plan, manage the climate crisis, and the change that comes with it. So before the final motion to close today, as you represent your varying member states, I want you all to bear in mind the journey that it's taken you to get here. And imagine what a better world for all of us looks like, because you have what it takes to get there. I trust you all will represent the best of the present and the future of development and the UN system, remembering always to do one thing: put people at the center of all you do. Never forget the energy, creativity, and intellect you bring to issues that we face as humanity truly make me proud to stand before you today, wishing you the best of luck in everything you do as young and future great professionals. All around the world, young people like you are scaling up their efforts, using their skills, and most importantly, raising their voices to accelerate climate action. So from now on, just do it. Never forget that you're capable and that you are better for having each of your voices, we are better for having each of your voices as climate champions and global citizens in this country, the region, and this planet that we call home. I wish you all greater successes today and in the future. Thank you all.
So, very important words from our UN resident coordinator, acting as the UN, speaking to you from the UN today. That really makes a difference for us and kind of brings everything together that you've been doing for the last 7 weeks. Today now is you're putting all of that to the test. We are at the historic Parliament of Barbados today for the final. We were here before in the Senate chamber, in the upper house, but today, these majestic surroundings will be our home for the next couple of hours. So we want to thank the Clerk of Parliament, the staff, everybody who has made today possible. And with that, I invite the Acting Prime Minister, the Honourable William Duguid, to, of course, bring his remarks. And we are excited to have you here today, sir.
Good morning. You know, as you spoke about being in these majestic halls, it reminded me of when I first came in here as a member in 2003, but it feels like yesterday. Let me first say to the President of Rotary West, Mr. Hugh Callender, representatives of Rotary clubs in Barbados, all past district governors David Edwards and Sonia Aline, Didier Trebek, UN resident coordinator, and of course, my good friend, Senator, the Honorable Minister of Energy, Lisa Cummins, all ambassadors who may be present, principals and teachers, parents, and of course you, the students, who without you, this could not be possible. Let me first welcome all of you to the Parliament of Barbados, to a new refurbished Parliament of Barbados. And I feel so proud to see so many young people here gracing this Parliament. And it makes us recognize how important it is to not only have this institution, but to see so many people who are prepared to come and give up themselves and experience something that I've experienced for so many years, debating and understanding how important it is to be able to tackle issues of national, regional, and international importance. This year, it is my absolute privilege as Acting Prime Minister to welcome this group of young future leaders to the Parliament of Barbados. I am told that we have 40 students from secondary schools all across the island who are assuming the responsibilities of national leaders, debating critical issues surrounding climate change and the energy transition. I am confident as a professional myself, as a leader myself, that I am standing in a space where many of you will in the future come to occupy. I want to take this opportunity this morning, and a great opportunity it is, I must say, to commend the partners who have put this event together for the Rotary Clubs of Barbados, the United Nations in Barbados, and the secondary schools represented by you, the students, the principals, and the teachers who have given up the last 7 weeks on a Saturday to prepare for this important debate. The issues of climate change and energy transition are critical national and global issues. Here in Barbados specifically, we, as you know, have set a net zero transition target of 2030. It will take a collaborative effort nationally, regionally, and globally for countries like Barbados, small island developing states, to meet their energy targets while navigating a climate crisis not of our own making. And so I am heightened and excited that young people, many of you preparing for future levels of education in our tertiary system and abroad, are already tackling weighty global issues such as this one. This is a preparatory and important process that can only serve you well in your future. This Parliament in which you now sit is where all major decisions affecting our nation are made. And incidentally, I must say that normally when I speak in this Parliament, I'm allowed 30 minutes. I will not take up all 30 minutes today. It is the home of our legislative branch of government. And as you sit here today, speaking on these topics, half of the countries around the globe are at different levels of development debating these same issues. And I want you to be conscious of the weight of responsibility, not just of today, but of the future that rests on your young shoulders. You, all of you, are the future of our nation. You, all of you, are the future of the international community. And I'm proud, I'm very proud, to stand here in your midst this morning at the 9th Annual Model United Nations. I look forward to watching online. Thank you all.
You hear that? Future leaders, all. He's looking for you in these chambers. Thank you so much, Acting Prime Minister. So, folks, we are at the end of the formal part of today's proceedings. We now start in 5 minutes, we will be changing around to starting the sessions where we'll have our opening speeches, our country positions. At this time, before many of you disappear, we need to thank parents, the schools that actually took the chance on Model UN. We've had a few schools this year who are new to us, and I know that we have students here who have not missed a week. And we have almost a full cohort from the beginning. So I am sure that this shows what Model UN can do for you, the commitment, but absolute fun that we've had over the last 7 weeks. And today will be exceptional. We thank our delegates, our ministers, for the dedication that they have shown over the last 7 weeks. Sometimes it's been rocky, but we've actually gotten there. We've gotten to the end where everybody, though nervous today, it's only the initial nerves. It's because you're here at Parliament, right? Because we have this, we've got this sorted. I want to thank our friends who are here every week. Ricky, let me do the official. John Wilson, Nicole Foster, Jawara Weeks, the Rotarians, the Rotaractors, the mentors who aren't Rotaractors but saw this as an opportunity to serve and an opportunity to give back. And we want to thank them as well. We'll do the special thank yous later, but it's important for us to recognize the people that make all of this possible. We especially want to thank again, now in this vote of thanks section, the UN House for accommodating us for 7 weeks, and to the staff who make sure that we have what we need when we get there. So we are exceptionally grateful for your support and for having us every year, and we look forward to being long partners in this. Thank you. We thank Parliament again for allowing us today to be in the lower house. Previously, we were in the upper house. We thank them for allowing the proceedings of today to be televised live on Parliament TV. This is truly historic for our Model UN, and I know that in our district, in our Rotary district of 7030, this don't happen there, so this is a first. Thank you very much. I need to pay special thanks to the people who gave our refreshments every week. The members of Rotary West. We have Simone Hatchety, Michelle Lewis Downer, Donna Edwards, who baked all these fabulous baked goods, Heather Tull. We could not have gotten through those sessions without you. John Hunt, who every week made sure that the coffee was just right and ready. We thank him for the coffee. And to all of you who ensured that we got through to today. So, ladies and gentlemen, parents, again, a special thank you for encouraging your children to come every week, for ensuring that they came ready and prepared, because without you, we couldn't have a Model UN. We are all eager and ready to serve as Rotarians, and I'm sure that next Saturday, we're going to get a WhatsApp in our group that says, so what are we doing today? Because we've been doing this for 8 weeks. The Rotarians enjoy service, and as I say, this is who we are, proud Rotarians today, to welcome you all here. So we're going to break for 5 minutes, just so that I can refresh myself, and we will then start the country positions. So thank you again, and stay tuned, because you are going to be wowed off your socks. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. All right, ready? Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is my pleasure and honor to declare open this 9th Model United Nations General Assembly and call to order this plenary meeting. The Assembly will first hear an address by Her Excellency, the representative of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I would like to now remind the representatives that you are asked to stand as you address the Assembly. Your Excellency.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, good morning. Imagine a world with less destructive and less frequent wildfires, hurricanes, tsunamis, and floods. A world with less extreme temperatures, cooler oceans, and fewer droughts. A world where less species were at constant risk of extinction, where there was greater food and nutritional security, and where we could provide our people with greater protection from poverty and geographical displacement. Sadly, this is not the world that we live in today. The ongoing climate crisis is an increasing problem and continues to hold our world hostage, destroying the natural and built environments and threatening the lives of our people all across the world. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is sensitive to the negative impact. Equally, the crisis has on global sustainable development, but equally of our member countries. In May 2014, Bosnia and Herzegovina recorded the most rainfall in 120 years. In August 2022, Jordan recorded the highest temperatures above their seasonal averages. From signing the Paris Agreement earlier this year to the continued implementation of the programs under our green economy transition to reach our goals of limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius, we remain committed to improving the climate resistance of our members and aiding them in creating a sustainable future for their citizens and the rest of the world. As a result, we welcome and encourage the support of our fellow financial institutions, the developed world, and the wider community in the fulfillment of our mandate to promote environmentally sound and sustainable development and increase resilience to the impacts of climate change. Together, we can mitigate against climate change and transform our imagined world into a realized reality. Together, we can avert this crisis and enact the positive changes this world needs. Together, we can protect our people.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to remind representatives of the order of speakers. There are 35 representatives to address the Assembly today. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development will be followed by the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, followed by Ukraine, the United States of America, Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Panama, the Asian Development Bank, the Federative Republic of Brazil. Okay. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, so we'll now hear from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Good morning, Chairman, fellow delegates, and distinguished guests. In this present moment, and sadly in the years to come, we all have to face and fear climate change. Today, as a representative of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, I will no longer plead for water, nor will I plead for aid, but only unity. The earth is dying. Our motherlands are suffering. Your people, my people, their people are all suffering. And the question remains, what can be done? Well, let's start with what Jordan has done about our fight against climate change. We are making the most of our country's significant solar and wind resources. Jordan is a leader in the region in clean energy production with 29% of electricity powered by renewables. And we plan to reach 50% by 2030. We didn't achieve this alone, and neither will you. Strong collaborations at the global and regional levels, as well as between public and private sectors, can resolve some issues caused by climate change. In the fight for life on Earth, no one is a bystander. Every contribution counts. As the King of Jordan said on November 7th, 2022, climate change is no stranger to us, but it does not have to define our future. In conclusion, we are calling on all developing countries to work together because we have common goals and common issues. We call on developed countries also to assist with funding through special drawing rights. The call on financial institutions is to make financial affordable and with low interest loans, lifting restrictions, and offer grants for all developing countries. Hear my call for unity. Don't lose focus. If you do, we lose much more. Let this call for help replay in your mind because our countries are at risk. Shukran laka ala wakati.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Ukraine.
Master Chairperson, Vice Chairperson, fellow delegates, and distinguished guests, good morning. I'm truly sad to say this conference that Ukraine cannot carry out our responsibilities to fight this climate change war. Initially, we stepped up to the part. We updated our nationally determined contribution in 2021 and set a target to achieve an economy-wide net domestic reduction of 65% in greenhouse gases emissions by 2030. We have planned to do so by cutting methane emissions in several sectors and converting organic waste into energy. Unfortunately, all of these plans came to a halt a year later, February 2022, as we cannot fight two wars simultaneously. But though we cannot fight both, we are taking attacks from both. Last year, Ukraine was flooded in darkness, as our energy supply grid was consistently bombed, destroying over 40% of our power production and affecting multiple cities whose citizens were exposed to harsh winter conditions as temperature dropped below -20 degrees Celsius. This is a problem that's still being repaired today, as only 70% of our power grid is functioning, with blackouts being common and as bombs are still raining, impacting millions of citizens, with interruptions in energy, water supplies, heating, and electricity. And because of climate change, Ukraine is more vulnerable to droughts. When people can't rely on the systems built for them by their country, they will have to rely on rivers, which are being dried up. Over 6 million people in Ukraine are struggling every day to get drinking water, one of the most essential human needs. That is just a fraction of our troubles today. 2 weeks ago, my country had a negotiation with a delegate of Russia in hopes we can come to an agreement of peace, as this cannot continue any longer. Honestly, my country had a little hope with this negotiation, but we had reached a conclusion to ease the rising cost of living. Nonetheless, an agreement to end this war is still very far away, as the delegate of Russia has made it clear that they are not going to concede, and neither shall we. Once again, I ask for your support, monetary and political, to punish the aggressor of my nation. As Our Excellency, President Zelensky said, it is a victory when the weapons fall silent and the people speak up. This is not a war that can be solved with just negotiation. In order to end this war that's impacting millions of civilians, millions need to stand up. I'm asking for your support, fellow delegates, your countries, and your people, because our world is on the verge of collapse. And we need to make a priority for everyone in this room, everyone on this earth, to prevent that, lest we lose a home with nowhere to turn to. At least my people could go to our allied countries, but where the people of the earth will go when our home is collapsing. We can only fight this war against climate change if we unite together, and we can only do that if we stop fighting each other. I've seen with my own eyes what can transpire when your people have been pillaged and plundered, and I do not wish for the same faces to be across the whole world. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the United States of America.
Good morning, ministers, fellow delegates, and Your Excellencies. Climate change. Surprising how two words can entail such a large amount of damage, and the fault is unfortunately entirely that of human ignorance. We acknowledge that we have established goals to work towards together. However, some of these promised goals are no longer achievable. As outlined in the IPCC press release just recently, our levels are at 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and at this pace, we will not remain at our goal of 1.5 degrees. Nonetheless, we will continue working towards the following: 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, a net zero emissions economy by 2050, and 40% of the benefits from federal climate and clean energy investments will go to underprivileged communities. However, if we continue to disregard this issue as nothing less than an international emergency, we will continue facing horrific climate events. And as indisputable a fact as that is, I will not come here and use precious time to tell you about events such as Hurricane Katrina, because though we honor those that were lost, we must focus on our futures. Because I ask you, fellow ministers, why? Why must our people be burdened with our inefficiency and inability to meet climate goals? As the United States of America, we recognize our responsibility to support those who require assistance in alliance with the Bridgetown Initiative. Therefore, we plan to contribute a total of $8.4 billion to the climate emergency directly from our ODA. This does not include our commitment to the $100 billion climate finance goal we actively fund until its predicted end in 2025, nor does it include our various co-sponsorships and funding plans included in the resolution. Another objective we must face as a united front is the realistic expectation of a just transition. As much as the US recognizes that all are working hard to reach our climate goals, we must acknowledge the time it will take to correct our wrongdoings. Therefore, we are taking the necessary steps to limit the impact of harmful industries such as the oil mining industry by seeking local alternatives for the time being as opposed to harmful oil and import exportation. This needs to be a shift for us. These can no longer be words spoken and forgotten. They need to be actions taken and remembered by future generations. We have done, continue doing, and will do everything in our power to better the climate situation, and will aid those who ask us for help. Ultimately, we are one world and one people. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Celsius that will cause irreparable damage to our planet. It reinforced the knowledge that the world over has held for decades, that many hands make light work, and that even though the battle will be long, we will be able to succeed. However, it also states in no uncertain terms that the international community has to act now to combat this crisis, or it will be too late. Greenhouse gas emissions must be significantly reduced in the very near future for us to even have a chance at moving forward. Attention must be paid to the different circumstances that each country face in fighting the climate change to ensure a just transition to the green technology alternatives that will define the future. All of this must be done before it is too late. So I am here today to ask you, how many more disasters have to happen before we act? How many more people have to lose their homes before we do something? In the words of Trinidad and Tobago's national motto, together we aspire, together we achieve. The citizens of the world are counting on us, the leaders of the international community, to take up this mantle and to meet the goals we need to fight this crisis. And having been given the opportunity to do this, we cannot let them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair now recognizes the representative of Panama.
Excellencies, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. As a carbon negative country and a developing nation, Panama is at the forefront of the egregious battle against climate change. With devastating disasters such as deforestation, flash floods, droughts, and many more becoming more frequent and dangerous, we need to act now to ensure that our people, countries, and Earth are safe. Many people are affected by these disastrous effects because of the abstract actions being taken by us. For example, in Panama, people are feeling the brunt effects of climate change, whether it may be losing a job, a home, or a loved one. We need to implement concrete actions to ensure that in developing countries such as mine, we do not have to work every summer to restore our homes and protect ourselves from becoming the next who are going to lose homes, livelihoods, or worse, die. To protect our livelihoods from such catastrophic events, we are working to reforest 1 million hectares by 2050, bringing us closer to the goal of being our own carbon sink. We have already reforested 30% of the country, securing us a place as a carbon negative country, as the country's forest is absorbing more than what is emitted. We also plan on implementing acts to protect our marine ecosystems and enhance our shipping industry to meet the IMO's goal of decreasing 50% of carbon emissions by 2050. With such progressive acts, we have been granting carbon credits under the Paris Agreement. With these funds, we plan to enhance our rainforests, create new jobs such as ecotourism and biodiversity protection. With these plans, we are closer to protecting our country and introducing new industries. In accordance with my developing nations, we are asking with the help of IFIs to grant benefits for those countries who are tottering from the effects of COVID-19 and previous climatic disasters. We are also recommended that the IMF grants us with 100 million SCRs as stated in the Bridgestone Initiative to help developing nations, SIDS, and especially LDCs who do not have the funding to support their plans. We are also calling on developed economies to support us in the fight to restore our blue and green economies, because if we lose those, we lose hope. What actions will take place to ensure that smart, concrete decisions are made to help our countries? We need to act to ensure that our countries and most importantly, our people are safe, that our children are ready for their bright futures, that climate change will not ravish their livelihoods anymore. Because for the benefit of the world, for the benefit of our people is why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Asian Development Bank.
Senator Cummins, Your Excellencies, fellow delegates, good morning. The climate crisis doesn't seem to be improving, prompting many to acquire the need for increased climate finance. The Asian Development Bank has decided to meet this call with your assistance by elevating our ambition to $100 billion in cumulative climate finance from our own resources within the next 7 years. The ADB has begun joining with some of the governments of its allies to officially launch an organization which can pilot ETM in Southeast Asia. This platform was created with the intent to bring together partners to invest alongside ADB's own financing. With pledges of $665 million from many different governments, groups, and organizations, the Green Recovery Platform will de-risk investments and catalyze $7 billion in public and private capital for green infrastructure projects. Our venture promotes investments in innovative venture stage solutions, unlocking our region's enormous potential to scale technology for climate impact. We are strengthening the capacities of developing member countries to reach their nationally determined contributions and address the issue of climate change by establishing platforms such like NDC Advance and the Article 6 Support Facility. We enable access to new and innovative co-financing opportunities with public and private partners and mobilize concessional financing from global funds, including through carbon markets. We invest in building resilience and empower communities, cleaner technology, and smarter infrastructure. The ADB has been a helping hand for those who have been affected by natural disasters pertaining to climate change. Wildfires, earthquakes, floods, you name it, we have been there. Pledges, grants, loans, whatever it takes to help. We are urging those of you who are yet to get on board with our projects to ponder on this opportunity that stands before you and make wise decisions that will not only benefit each and every one of us, but generations to come. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Federative Republic of Brazil, who will be followed by the International Monetary Fund and the Commonwealth of Australia.
Madam President, delegates, and special guests, good morning. We are living in a decisive decade for climate action. Extreme weather events are growing in intensity across the globe, threatening lives and livelihoods. Commitment and the achievement of the 2030 climate agenda is now more important than ever. The current energy transition is driven by the challenges of climate change and requires profound transformations within my country's energy sector. This transition will evolve more intensely and rapidly. Brazil has last updated its NDC in March 2022, confirming its commitment to reducing its GHG emissions by 37% by the year 2025 and 50% by the year 2030. In addition, technological and economic transformations must provide an inclusive and accessible dynamic. This transition brings a great opportunity and an immense challenge for future presidential mandates, requiring long-term vision and strategy, capable of integrating the energy and environmental sectors in order to boost vast national energy potential for a low-carbon economy, to ensure that Brazil belongs to the future of energy and becomes a key player worldwide, measuring up to its resources and potential. Brazil was just in a national crisis when landslides plagued the state of Sao Paulo, which had experienced 600 millimeters of rain. Now the southeastern state is in ruins. We are working along the clock to displace those that were hurt in this tragedy, which isn't an easy task. However, we are determined to come to the help of our citizens who need us most. A gentleman by the name of Learte Silva is among the many who suffered such grievous losses in this tragedy. He lost his brother, and he almost lost his baby niece. Now him and his family are forced to search and relocate. The heavy rainfall is causing these catastrophes, and it is just a start of things to come. It is important that our government works on restoring Brazil's credibility on climate action. seeing that we have one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world. The issue of deforestation continues to affect Brazil's Amazonian rainforests, and we are continuing to work with our partners in the international community to achieve an immediate result in reversing deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon. Though carbon sinks are a very important part of climate change, they do not solve the problem. It is essential that we abandon dependence on fossil fuels and constitute a better commitment to renewable energy. We as a nation call on the developed countries like the G7 to simply help and assist where needed. We must not carry on as we are, or a 3-degree catastrophe awaits us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the International Monetary Fund.
Madam President, distinguished delegates and guests, good morning. As we've seen from the IPCC report, we are no longer at the point of prevention, we are at the point of survival. Due to decades of stagnation and inactivity, our countries and citizens may soon pay the price of the climate crisis. The IMF recognizes the role that we play not only in climate rehabilitation, but in climate mitigation. Our institution also hears the requests of our constituent LDCs and low-income countries under this resolution, and we have resolved to act on them. For low-income countries to achieve their NDCs, they require funding. Despite being among the least contributing to the climate crisis, they fight their battles alone. Thus, the IMF pledges to aid these countries where possible. We did this by implementing the Resilience and Sustainability Trust with a basket of $40 billion. This trust benefits not only low-income countries, but we have also set vulnerability as a criterion for aid. This criterion has expanded the scope to which we can lend under this trust. For example, Barbados received $189 million from the RST. Rwanda and Bangladesh, 2 LDCs, greatly benefited from the RST as well. Having engaged with and been commended by the head proponents of the Bridgetown Initiative, we believe that the RST is vital in the world's just transition to becoming net zero by providing concessional funding at rates as low as 1% interest rates to low-income and to vulnerable middle-income countries. Additionally, the IMF believes that the highest carbon emitters of the world must implement higher carbon taxing. According to our research, the price of carbon must rise to $75 per ton by 2030. This will serve as an effective incentive for decarbonization. To quote the managing director of the IMF, as Adam Smith, the father of economics, said, "The butcher and baker don't feed you out of the generosity of their hearts. They feed you out of self-interest." We must inculcate a self-interest in decarbonization for our planet's sake. Finally, the IMF encourages other IFIs represented here today to consider how facilities like the RST can fit into your lending toolkits. The climate crisis is an all-hands-on-deck situation. Let's all work together for the good of man and the good of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Commonwealth of Australia.
Good day, fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, and distinguished guests. We need to recognize the situation for what it is. The decimation of our planet will lead to the direct causation for the eradication of life. The people of Australia have been vehemently opposed to the climate crisis, as we all should be. In Australia, we encourage suffrage and the continuous dialogue within our country, especially our parliament, about fossil fuel industries that will certainly help to accomplish our goal of net zero emissions by 2050 at a sooner date. While Australia undoubtedly has resources to protect ourselves during the climate crisis and sustain our environment, this does not mean that the people of Australia will never be in harm's way. In the rabid bushfires of 2019 to 2020, 12.8 million hectares in New South Wales alone was ravaged by the bushfires. In fact, since 1988, we have seen a 350% increase in the area of landmass decimated by bushfires. This devastation is not without consequence. New South Wales is home to many Aboriginal communities and lands, many of which were allowed no mercy in this climatic disaster, forcing our people whose cultural ideations are so dependent on their spiritual lands to forgo them and flee, leaving behind their family, their traditions, their memories. Why must the people of the earth suffer at the hands of the worsening climate that they have not caused? They deserve better, so we must do better. I raise to you the people in the islands of the independent state of Samoa, and I raise to you the people in the islands of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. And I also wish to raise to you the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders of Australia who are unwillingly forsaking their ancestral territories to barely escape with their lives as the sea levels rise and demolish their homes. Why must we allow this to happen to them? Today, I hope Australia is to be a leader to all of us. With our approved plan with the UNFCCC on our long-term emissions reduction strategy and climate action plan, and our various co-sponsorships and pledges to donations within the resolutions outlined later today. I am here today to call on the leaders to replicate our example, to lead our united world to a brighter, sustainable future. We cannot be complacent in the destruction of livelihoods. And so this is why I call on the leaders in this room to recognize the Earth's suffering and to not associate ourselves with disruptive dissensions that do only hinder the resolution of the decimation of our planet while our people mourn. To fulfill our duties as world leaders, we must surpass our climate goals, or it will mean the lives of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Republic of Rwanda.
How do you like your skies? Natural or man-made? Delegates, Chairman, Your Excellencies. In a world full of wars and economic chaos, it is easy for climate change to fall to priority 11 on a list of 10. But make no mistake about it, global warming poses detrimental threats to millions of individuals. Not statistics, not numbers, but individuals. Mothers, fathers, daughters, sons. The people affected by climate change are no longer some imagined future generation, but living people alive today. For many years, Rwanda suffered at the mercy of global warming. Decades ago, we were easily able to grow crops and livestock to feed our families. But now climate change has become so severe that these once everyday commodities have now become a rare luxury. So, to better the lives of our people, we bore the responsibility of creating a low-carbon strategy. Since its establishment in 2011, our strategy has proven itself to be useful for minimizing our national emissions. But despite this, we find the sustainability of our country is still under threat by climate change, even though we only contribute to 0.01% of global emissions. But countries have not, in some districts, floods flush out the dirt beneath our villages, while in other districts, droughts deprive plants of the water they require. But countries have not yet fully woken up to what this prolonged climate disaster would look like worldwide. Allow me, therefore, to prognosticate, both pessimistically and worse, realistically. I predict the rising temperatures will continue to produce severe food shortages or even famine. Destruction of agriculture across many African nations is already progressing and is being amplified by the current Russia-Ukraine war. Food shortages are particularly noteworthy because in the future, the increase in global population can only be supported by double the amount of food we have today. Furthermore, there's the issue of mass migration due to floods. Forced migration has characterized my country with the traumatic wisdom to know that humanitarian liberties will be at stake. Proper healthcare, education, or equal rights, and the diverse pool of belief systems between refugees and host communities can escalate countries into internal conflicts. So to avoid these detrimental ramifications, Rwanda is requesting various policy implementation for climate mitigation and adaptation for all LDCs. These include, but are not limited to, technologies such as wind turbines and solar panels, and resilient crop varieties that are able to survive in the event of droughts. In addition, we're also requesting the disbursement of 100 billion of unused SDRs to the countries who need it. The earth is our home. Let's protect it as our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Republic of South Africa, who will be followed by the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
In the words of the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I quote, "I come from a land richly endowed by God, with wonderful natural resources, rolling mountains, singing birds, out of the blue skies, radiant sunshine, golden sunshine," end quote. That is South Africa. But for how long, delegates, will our lands remain fertile if there are inconsistent rains to water them? For how long will our rolling mountains continue to sit in splendor if they are ravished by wildfires? For how long, delegates, will our birds or even our people continue to sing if their homes are destroyed and they hunger and thirst? For how long, delegates, will the African continent, developing economies, or the world continue to bask in our blessings? Unless there is greater global ambition towards climate change mitigation, these liberties shall perish. As we progress, South Africa's focus is on food and water security and protecting our vulnerable workers and communities, as they deserve a just and equitable transition as we phase out of the use of fossil fuels. Therefore, the South African Cabinet has approved the National Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which requires $98 billion. Although we've received pledges of loans from international partners, more is required. Therefore, we call for reform in private and commercial institutions, as well as multilateral development banks, to better meet the climate resilience and sustainable development needs of developing economies, allow access to concessional funding, and help us avoid debt traps. We cannot achieve our goal of climate change mitigation unless developed economies shall honor their responsibilities and fulfill their promises to those countries in need of support. In South Africa, we cherish unity, so we hope that we can achieve the goal of climate change mitigation together. And delegates, as I close, I ask you to remember this. Remember that a roaring lion will kill no one, meaning that success cannot be brought by speech alone. It must be paired with action. And what we, as the international community, need at this time is greater ambition in the form of action. I also ask you to remember this, that just as the Inwe represents bravery in South Africa, so too do our people, who despite being minor contributors, are still brave. I ask that we channel this bravery and do not hesitate to make the decisions that shall save us all. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
If you not here, you got feel. When we feel, you got here. Good morning, fellow delegates, ministers, and other distinguished guests. We live in a world that is both beautiful and fragile. Our lush forests, our pristine rivers, our breathtaking landscapes are all gifts from nature that we have a duty to protect and preserve. But we are facing a threat that could destroy all of this and more: climate change. We cannot afford to ignore the reality of climate change any longer. We are already seeing the effects from rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events. Our farmers are struggling to grow crops, our fishermen are struggling to catch fish, and our coastal communities are facing the risk of flooding and erosion. But climate change is not just an environmental issue. It is a human issue. It affects our health, our food security, our homes, our livelihoods. The changes we make today have repercussions, affecting the next generations who, if nothing is done, will inherit a world that is less safe and less prosperous than the one we inherited. As a country, we are committed to doing our part to address this global crisis. We have already taken the steps to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and protect our natural resources, including the implementation of our low-carbon developmental strategy and the RED Plus program. As a result of the preservation of our 18 million hectares of lush inland rainforests, Guyana is home to a carbon sink. This allows us to achieve a net zero carbon emission rating, capturing 19.5 gigatons of carbon dioxide, consequentially more emissions than we release. While rain can fall, dew can fall. More change needs to happen towards a sustainable future. If we continue to implement at this rate, 122 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty by 2030. If we must do more, these are human lives that are being affected, our citizens. The consequences of inaction are severe, not just for Guyana, but for the entire world. Together we must contribute to the fight against climate change, strengthen commitments made under the Paris Agreement, and ensure that developed countries fulfill their obligations towards supporting developing countries in their efforts to address climate change. Increase financial and technical assistance to aid the transition to renewable energy and develop climate-resistant, resilient infrastructure. The international cooperation and collaboration that we achieve now advances our progress towards a more sustainable and resilient future for all. Climate change is no longer a distant threat, but a reality we face today. Natek faya stick at night for what you could see in the day. Don't wait until it's too late to see things when there have been clear warnings. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Inter-American Development Bank, followed by the representative of the Republic of Mauritius.
Your Excellencies, delegates, pleasant good morning. Our aim for over the last 64 years has been to hasten development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Today, adjusting to the fast-pacing and modern world, we integrated our aim to development in a sustainable, climate-friendly way. In 2015, the governors of the IDB approved an update to the bank's institutional strategy. This update reveals that while the parties of Latin America and the Caribbean has made significant progress over the last decade, there is still some challenges to overcome, a major one being climate change. To aid in this continuous battle for climate resilience and further our goal, we have executed many projects, such as the Advanced, Transparent, Strategic, and Investment Pathway for a Just Transition. The total cost was $800,000 US, and its main objective was to inform decision-making with strategic and analysis opportunities and mitigation actions, along with to design strategic instruments that translate climate goals into investment pathway. We also executed the transition to electromobility in Barbados, supporting the government of Barbados by creating an enabling environment for the ample penetration of electric vehicles. This set in place national strategies and plans and regulatory framework development. In maintaining consistency, we at the Inter-American Development Bank recommend grants to manufacturers for the purpose of creating economical, more efficient hybrid vehicles. We also recommend these grants to parties in Latin America and the Caribbean to help shift to more renewable energy in their country. According to a recent IDB study, investing in long-term planning for adoption can save lives and property both now and in the future, and prevent or reduce damages caused by climate change. The IDB estimates that every dollar invested in resilient infrastructure can generate up to $4 in economic benefits. Therefore, it is crucial for countries to include in their development planning climate risk and prioritize multi-sector actions to boost resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair would now like to recognize the minister representing the Republic of Mauritius.
My fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, good morning. We meet here to all fight a common goal, climate change. What is particularly challenging for Mauritius is the fact that although we only account for 0.01% of global greenhouse gas emissions, we are one of the most exposed to natural disaster shocks and ranks in terms of adaptive capacity. Notwithstanding this fact, we have instituted robust climate change policies aimed at ensuring compliance with international climate change agreements and have set national objectives and targets, such as increase the share of energy generation from greenhouse sources to 60%, phase out the use of coal, increase energy efficiency by 10%, expand the knowledge base on climate change risks and their impact on communities, and increase resilience of human activities by improving governance and enhancing disaster preparedness and response. Mauritius, as a member of SIDS, is leaving no stones unturned to address this climate crisis. Yet we cannot succeed without the financial, technological transfer and capacity building support of the international community, our donor partners, and regional and sub-regional partners, and the developed countries. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 10 years, the increasing frequency and intensity of cyclones, torrential rains, and flash floods has threatened people's livelihoods, lives, and mental states. March 2013, 11 people were killed by flash floods in Port Louis. April 2016, tropical cyclone forced evacuation. January 2018, tropical cyclone flooding. February 2019, flash floods. 259 people displaced, to damage to infrastructure, private residences, and farms, and severely affected the electricity network. February 2023, Cyclone Freddy. Over 14,000 homes were affected, with 5,500 destroyed, 3,079 flooded, and at least 9,696 damaged. Ladies and gentlemen, words are not enough. Without action, this climate catastrophe is coming for all of us. Together, we can protect the web of life that makes our planet unique and ensure that humanity prospers in harmony with nature. Together, let's adopt and deliver an ambitious framework, a peace pact with nature, and pass on a better, greener, bluer, and more sustainable world to our children. Together, let's not relent in the fight for climate justice and climate ambition. We must win this battle for our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair would now like to recognize the representative of the European Union, followed by the representative of the Solomon Islands.
Your Excellencies, delegates, and distinguished guests, good morning. Under the European Climate Law, EU countries must cut greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. Our goal is to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. We have made climate change a central element of our external policy. EU countries work together with global partners to strive for international engagement on climate and advance international efforts and initiatives. We have been at the forefront of international agreements on climate policies. We have such as the Paris Agreement in our bilateral relations with the non-EU countries. It shares its expertise and encourages partners to take bold action against the global warming, providing targeted support where necessary to those most affected to assist the transitions of their economies. The EU, represented by the Commission and the Council rotating presidency, takes part in the global conferences on climate, such as the United Nations COP meetings, where we strive to push other countries to do more to address the climate crisis. Climate change cannot be stopped immediately, and some of its consequences are inevitable. Even if we could cut all our emissions now, this is why we, EU, have been helping communities around the world adapt to the changes already happening. For instance, we have created 5 eco-villages in Tarazina to fight the desecration of the climate change. In the face of increasing aridity in the area, the inhabitants have received training on water conservation, soil erosion preventions, crop rotation, and biofertilization. Even in the face of the urgent global challenge, there is still hope if we all take action now. Funding climate action might not be enough to completely change all the time, but it is one of the most powerful tools we have. EU countries have committed to spending 30% of the EU long-term budget for 2021 to 2027 and the next generation EU for climate-related projects. For this reason, we will remain at the forefront of global climate action. We continue to urge our members to support our partners, in particular initiatives such as the proposed Bristol initiative with the focus on the most vulnerable countries and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Solomon Islands, followed by the representative of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Excellencies, fellow delegates, specially invited guests, good morning. Across the world, we have witnessed a shift from simple calls to combat climate change to distress demand, urgent action against current and continued climate crisis. We in the Solomon Islands especially understand the need for this urgency. Global carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel and industry increased by 5.3% in 2021 to reach a record high of 37.12 billion metric tons. Of this, the Solomon Islands is responsible for 0.3% of these emissions. Despite this, Solomon Islanders find themselves on the front line of a war being waged against climate change. With rates of rise 3 times higher than the global average, our rising sea levels are already consumed 5 of our islands, causing them to disappear into the ocean. With little land available for resettlement, 80% of our population lives in low-lying coastal areas, leaving our people and property susceptible to the impacts of storm surges, king tides, and other natural disasters. Already synonymous with severe flooding, these disasters occur with increasing frequency and threaten to wipe my people from the face of the earth, taking thousands of years of culture and history along with them. While we face high climate vulnerability, we are similarly driven by our duty as responsible global citizens to recognize the need to develop low carbon economy and to mitigate against and adapt to climate change. As a result, our government has launched a key operation to help our country improve access to climate finance, to facilitate the building of infrastructure that will be able to withstand the rising sea levels. Fellow delegates, my people are on the brink of extinction, and by extension, the world as a whole. It is only a matter of time before we run out of habitable land and natural resources. That is why the Solomon Islands is doing everything that we can to preserve our country. We would like to urge the developed countries and financial institutions to lend assistance to the effort to preserve and improve the quality of life for our people. In closing, I leave you with this. Natural disasters can almost never be prevented. Therefore, it is our burden to prevent prevent the unnecessary loss of human life and suffering. However, it is only through adequate funding that this can be made possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished guests, good morning. Excellencies, we gather here today not only as representatives of respective countries, but as citizens of a world in grave danger. How long will we stand by as our global neighborhood threatens to be no more, and our neighbors are sinking, burning, dying by the millions? Will we continue to forget those such as Afzal Ali who struggle to make ends meet? Excellencies, we must be more ambitious in our fight against the climate crisis. I urge larger emitters to increase climate consciousness and ambition, not only by decarbonizing your industries, but also by giving monetary contributions to our neighbors in need, because, as is becoming abundantly clear, the lowest emitters are by no means the least affected. Excellencies, this is no political issue. This is an issue of the fate of our world, of our home. In this fight, let us not forget the people. Remember the struggles that lie behind every statistic and the faces behind each fact. A human life is worth any sacrifice. It is priceless. Yet I would be here all day if I even tried to count the number of lives thrown away because of our addiction to fossil fuels and our profit over people approach. Excellencies, remember your people. Remember your pledges. Lead, lend, act. Lead your countries to net zero. Lend a hand to the crippled economies of this world. Act. Act for your people. Act on your promises. Let us do what is just and not just what is profitable. Floods, fires, death. Excellencies, these are the consequences of our actions and the crises of our carbon emissions. If we continue on this self-destructive path, the millions affected will become billions and the lives lost may become our very own. We must act, and we must act now, as united neighbors, as united nations. Stay under 2 degrees to save you and to save me. I am obliged.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Russian Federation, followed by the independent state of Samoa and the People's Republic of Bangladesh.
Russia is well aware of the topic of climate change and has access to relevant topics to this topic. But this challenge can only be mitigated with ease if countries understand their roots, their history. We in Russia have a goal, but that goal can only be achieved if we reach a mutual agreement and understand those roots. Even though our main export is fossil fuels, we have been honoring our goals by modernizing industrial equipment, which has been lessening our carbon emissions in recent years by almost 33%. Lessening carbon emissions can take a toll on a country's economy, which is why we believe that any decision to curtail climate change should be made with the country's profitability, success, and overall development in mind. Furthermore, in our country, we have been seeing an increase in wildfires. These wildfires are depleting our forest area, subsequently affecting our carbon sink. Russia is not a stranger to wildfires, but one of the most weighty of the lot is the 2010 Russian wildfires. 700,000 acres gone, over 2,000 buildings destroyed, and 55,000 dead. The temperature in our country was abnormally high that year at 40 degrees, but it rose well above 100 degrees with the help of the wildfires. Like Bakunina, a Russian woman, watch helplessly, watch bravely as her village, friends, and family's houses were burnt to a crisp in less than 30 minutes. We allocated a considerable amount of funds to help those who were left in need because of this disaster. Still, for us to ensure this doesn't happen again, we call on the international community, including institutions like the ICC, to learn their lessons, and for some, learn their history. We in Russia have improved our forest protection system and have done our best to aid in the efforts as it relates to the climate. But extreme legal action sets us back in our goals, and then affects the rest of the world on a larger scale. Similar occurrences of this same suppressant can be seen in many other countries worldwide. Russia is a country of valuable power and resources, and above all, we're a country that takes action when needed. But sadly, our value to the rest of the world is dependent on the world itself. That's how Russia is personified. With this in mind, negotiations between my country and Ukraine have occurred based on the 12-point peace plan provided by my ally, China. Even though some understanding has been made between the motherland and Ukraine, there are still many gaps and misunderstandings. So, I leave you how I started, with this saying: if you want peace without an understanding, you must be prepared for war. And we will continue to fight until that understanding is made. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the independent state of Samoa.
Your Excellencies and delegates, Talofa, Samoa, a paradise where there is only one season all year round, where our sandy beaches are host to children playing, and our people are self-sufficient and proud of their connections to their families and oceans. An island that, up until the 20th century, had no major instances with natural disasters, became an island with new safety precautions because of disasters. A paradise that has had heritage of greenery all around, now left with patches of volcanic rock left in the wake of a hurricane. Delegates, it is 90 seconds to midnight. When will we understand that time is not on our side? Will it take my island to slowly be submerged, my culture and history gone from the global stage? Or will we only understand when London or New York is overwhelmed with sea level rise? Delegates, it is 90 seconds to midnight. We have some countries aiming for reduced carbon emissions by 2030, but then we have others hoping for 2060. This misalignment of goals on a global stage will not serve us. Countries must commit to reducing carbon emissions by 2030 rather than hoping for lower emissions by 2060. The doomsday clock is still ticking. My friends, we choose the untimely goal of 2060. Let us keep in mind that even with net zero by 2030, us developing countries will still be affected by current and past carbon emissions, further proving that what one of us does affects all of us. This is why we will continue to push our contributions, our biggest being the Samoa Pathway. It has expanded the mandate of the UN Orals to include SIDS and recognize the support needed by SIDS to build resilient societies and economies, because beyond our rich ecosystems, people are our greatest resource. To this end, it is clear, not only to my people, but to my fellow AOSIS members and to those in developed countries, that bold and decisive action is required. Not political grandstanding or just making of public gestures that are quickly undermined by funding counterproductive projects. My friends, I leave you with this one phrase. Ebala ma'ai alebala upu. Stones decay, but words remain. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the People's Republic of Bangladesh followed by the representative of Japan and the Republic of Ecuador.
Your Excellencies, delegates, good morning. In Bangladesh, we say, Raja Raja Jut kahe, ulak karara pranche. Kings wage wars, but reeds die. Last summer, flash floods ravaged across Bangladesh, virtually erasing towns and affecting 7.2 million people. Tropical cyclones cost Bangladesh roughly 1 billion annually, and by 2050, 13 million Bangladeshis could become internal climate migrants. Despite contributing less than 0.47%, these delegates are the horrors that have seized us as a climate vulnerable country. However, we choose not to remain victims, but flourish as pioneers of change. Establishing the Climate Change Trust Fund and doubling climate-related expenses in the last 70 years are just two of our initiatives. We are also home to one of the world's most extensive domestic solar energy programs and hope to have 40% of energy renewable by 2041. Our determination continues through the recently prepared and shared Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, which shapes our trajectory from vulnerability to resilience to prosperity. Yet know, Excellencies, that this threat binds us through the harsh truth. Climate change knows nor cares of borders. Global partnership is not a want, but a need. Bangladesh recognizes that as is the act, so is the result. And so we call on developed countries to fulfill their commitment of providing $100 billion annually to adaptation and mitigation. We call for the accelerated lending of green technology to developing countries at reduced prices, as outlined in the resolution. We call on IFIs to enhance access to international climate finance on grant or concessional terms for developing countries. We call on you, the global community, to uplift the voices of LDC countries, represented today by Togo, Solomon Islands, Rwanda, and Bangladesh. Excellencies, I remind you of Nazarene Begum, homeless mother of two, May 2022. Anil Haq, starving father of three, June 2022. Shumana Akhtar Aisha, widowed and sisterless, July 2022. There are 7.2 million of us who were affected by Sohet flash floods last summer. Excellencies, what do we say to 7.2 million people threatened with a life of constant terror? What do we say to 7.2 million people looking at us, world leaders, begging not for a sustainable future but a livable now? Bangladesh says, Yatakun sash, tatakun ash. Now is the time to harness momentum and honor our pledges. If not, our today will erase tomorrow. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of Japan.
Delegates, Excellencies, Ministers, Konnichiwa. Japan's main priority regarding climate change is to cut greenhouse gases in half by the year 2030 and reach a net zero target by the year of 2050. We are determined and to help keep global warming under the 1.5 degrees Celsius target and plan on reaching this target by using renewable energy sources such as hydroelectricity, solar energy, and wind energy. Climate change has many impacts on the lives of every Japanese citizen. These include daily heatwave conditions, tsunamis, and typhoons, which can cause millions of yen worth in damages. Japan has a partnership with the World Bank to create quality infrastructure and is also a key member to the IMF. On March 11th, 2011, the Tohoku earthquake triggered a tsunami, killing around 20,000 people. These waves caused the cooling systems of the power plant to be disabled, causing a reactor meltdown and releasing radiation into the surrounding areas. Mizue Kano is the name of one individual affected by this disaster. She was forced to leave her home, her community, and her memories, and relocate to Koriyama. In later years, she believed that she felt the effects of being exposed to radiation when she was diagnosed with the thyroid cancer. Countless natural disasters happen in Japan yearly, some of the biggest ones displacing up to 30,000 individuals and affecting millions of people, taking many lives.
There will be impacts on not just Japan, but the entire world. Water will become scarce and food will be hard to produce. There will be increased health risks and infrastructure will start to falter, as stated in the synthesis report. In order to help resolve and fight this climate crisis, Japan is doing our part in helping the international community by donating to the developing countries. In 2023, we're deciding to donate a percentage of our ODA amount, which is US 17.6 billion, to the developing countries. Along with these donations, Japan is aiding with issuing a low-interest, long-term monetary donation in accordance with the Bridgetown Initiative and is funding a $100 billion pledge made to the developing countries as stated in the resolution. If we do not act now, it will be too late. Climate change will alter many people's lives, not for the better, but for the worse. Now, as you sit there, ask yourself, am I helping mold the world into a better place? Will we continue to let these life-changing events occur for our children to face? Are we willing to do something about it? In my country, Japan, we have a proverb: to overcome a desperate situation, make a complete turn in one sudden burst. We must act now. Arigato.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Republic of Ecuador, followed by the representative of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Secretario General, Delegados, buenos días. Ecuador joins others in expressing its concerns about climate change and acknowledges that this ongoing conversation is indeed necessary. As we strive towards climate resilience, the re-evaluation of our climate needs, what we have done, and our future ambitions must be prioritized. Ecuador's main concern is navigating the El Nino phenomenon, which is currently exacerbating climate change and is actually expected to arrive this coming summer. El Nino causes extreme weather conditions, from droughts in the later months of 2009 to heavy rainfall shortly after in 2010. Additionally, we're looking to reduce our dependence on oil sectors by 35% within the next 45 years, all towards a just transition. The lives and livelihoods of persons impacted by natural disasters and those working in the industries under reformation must be prioritized, especially our most vulnerable, being those of indigenous and lower socioeconomic status. Ecuador is currently guided by the National Adaptation Plan project to reach our 1.5 reduction goal by 2030. Additionally, the Social Bosque has helped to decrease deforestation by 48.6% and is supported by a plethora of ecosystem rights in our Constitution. However, more can be done by all of us present today. Over the years, from Paris to Glasgow, the question remains, how do we close these climate change gaps? Climate finance is the answer. My government has calculated $7.5 billion for us to evenly, effectively address climate action by the year 2030. Green transportation, forestry initiatives, and collapsing the mining industry require money. Yet the $100 billion promised to developing countries has yet to be realized. Increasing SDRs, debt restructuring agreements, and debt forgiveness must become action priorities and not just mere talking points. Developing countries are at the front lines of climate change, as we're not only the first, but most impacted. The Togos, Samoas, and Chiles of the world are the most impacted. Yet, we have disproportionately less access to recover and build climate resilience. Our countries are not just land and reported statistics. They consist of people, real people like me and you. A famous Ecuadorian saying is cuando está ayudando a ocho, ambos ganan fuerza. Together, with global ambition and capacity, I believe we can end this conversation sooner rather than later, and instead of surviving, thrive in the world we live today. Gracias.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Good morning, colleagues, guests, fellow delegates. In the last year, Nigeria was hit with torrential rain, which has caused major flooding and millions of damage in Naira. This floods had an effect on many countries in Africa, but particularly Nigeria was affected as a coastal country in West Africa. These floods were made 80 times more likely to happen as a direct cause of climate change, causing sea level rise and flooding. I would like to tell you a story about a man just trying his best to send his sons to get an education, a man who worked hard, and a man who is a citizen of Nigeria, a man who got his livelihood, his sons, and everything he knew taken away and destroyed by these same floods. There is no point in me telling you this man's name, as this is just one story behind millions of statistics. All of this to say, Nigeria is committed to the cause of fighting climate change, and we support all actions and policies involving climate change, which is why we have put in place the Climate Change Act, which seeks to provide a goal of reaching net zero carbon emissions by the year 2060 through the use of adaptation technologies and climate change policies. But we cannot do this alone. We do not only require the support of Africa, but the entire world to accomplish this goal, because we desire to mainstream this act on an international level, as well as being provided with the means of achieving greener and safer technology, as well as, on a whole, improving infrastructure of climate vulnerable countries, as well as removing the unjust sanctions placed upon many of my fellow countries, restricting trade and crippling our economies. And thus, I say to you all here today, we are at a crossroads where our decision now will have an impact on the future. And if we do not make that decision, well, that consequence is for our ancestors. Lastly, I have to say, the motto of my nation is unity and faith, peace and progress, because that is how we can move forward, and that is how we can solve this issue. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Republic of Malta, followed by the representative of the World Bank and the Republic of Zimbabwe.
Madam Chair, distinguished guests, fellow delegates, good morning. Malta has the potential to lead the Mediterranean region in sustainable development. By adhering to our agreements with the European nations, European unions and AOSIS, we hope to be completely carbon neutral by 2050. We are currently on track to achieve this goal. Our objective of reducing emissions goes beyond the scope of the EU emissions trading scheme by 19%. This simplifies the transition to a carbon neutral economy. However, like many of our comrades in AOSIS, we are concerned about some major issues that could prevent us from achieving our goals. Climate change has significantly damaged our ecological environment. Many of our resources have been exhausted due to the increasing sea level and unpredictable natural disasters. The average annual temperature is predicted to rise another 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. This will have a devastating impact on our farmers, as our agricultural industry will be hit the hardest. If no progress is made, we will face immeasurable consequences. Malta remains committed to the preservation of peace in Europe. The conflict in Ukraine has reawakened painful memories of a past we wish to forget. We implore all parties involved to negotiate peacefully and respect territorial sovereignty, because there are no winners in the war, only survivors. We cannot afford to be distracted at a time when we are all at war against climate change. We have to remain firmly committed to achieve our goals. We ultimately call on this Assembly to encourage international institutions and larger developed nations to support cross-border cooperation through green investments in smaller economies via research and technology. Not only will this promote sustainable economic growth, but it will also provide a pathway to recovery from the adverse effects of climate change for the smaller nations that are minimal contributors to pollutions. Together, through the United Nations, we can forge a new pathway for mankind, a path of progress, productivity, and most importantly, peace. I'm obliged.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the World Bank.
Your Excellencies, esteemed delegates, and guests, good morning. Today, we are gathered in our united climate mission to stop finding temporary solutions to long-term problems, to not just build a safe future for our planet, but a possible one, and to fill the transnational gaps of poverty and inequality, considering developing nations and including women in these vital discussions. Although we are still in the conversational stage in regards to our commitments to the Bridgetown Initiative, our management and board have expressed support for it at our meetings with the custodians behind it. The values of the Bridgetown Initiative are closely aligned with our personal values and deeply embedded in both our current actions and future plans. As the world's largest multilateral founder of climate investments in developing nations, we plan to delve further into helping them lower poverty while heightening their climate resilience. Looking forward, we will be upscaling our climate finance by committing 35% of our financing to climate action and focusing on adapting the 5 systems which create the most emissions, at around 90% accumulatively. These are energy, agriculture, cities, transport, and manufacturing. Within the energy sector, we recognize an urgent need for a global transition to low-carbon energy. We will prioritize aiding countries with their power planning, creating renewable energy, and, most importantly, a just transition away from coal and oil dependencies. Regarding agriculture, we will step up support for climate-smart agriculture, including the blue economy, resulting in increased productivity, reduced emissions, and improved climate resilience. This way, countries can reduce water-related disasters and protect the livelihoods of their people. Regarding cities, we plan to help them decarbonize and promote green buildings and infrastructure. For transport, we recognize the potential of electric vehicles as the power sector is decarbonized. And regarding manufacturing, we will aid manufacturing sectors in developing a decarbonization path. As the World Bank, we have a responsibility to protect our donors. And as a pioneer for a sustainable future, we have a responsibility to focus on climate change. As an organization which strongly believes in helping developing nations, we have a responsibility to focus on them. Most of all, what we need from the international community is to understand that these goals are not mutually exclusive. Our distinctive goals as institutions, developed or undeveloped countries, can and should be rooted on our united goals in climate change. Climate finance can be profitable and create job opportunities, not only just save the environment. With 35% of our funding going towards climate action, we need the international community to make use of what we are offering in a way that is which is future-proof, rather than just current disaster-proof, as they assume their continuous motives on net zero. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the Republic of Zimbabwe, followed by the representative of Denmark.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, ministers, the Republic of Zimbabwe is committed to being an active and functional unit in the fight against climate change. We contribute less than 0.3% of the world's CO2 emissions, yet face harsher climate effects when compared to most other nations. Just recently, Cyclone Ida caused over $2 billion in damages, left 634 Zimbabweans dead, and 41,000 displaced. Are we so used to hearing about these accounts that they've lost all impact on the global community? Cyclones aren't the only climatic event we face. Close to half of our population is facing hunger, and all 15.9 million Zimbabweans are directly impacted by droughts and frequent epidemics caused by climate change. Due to these droughts, Zimbabweans are now fully dependent on UN food aid. Additionally, thousands of deaths are caused each year by disease which is rapidly spread through the increasingly warm climate. I think we can all agree when I say that this is unacceptable. Our voices must be heard, as too should our expectations and demands. We call for concrete and swift action. Those most responsible for the climate crisis must listen and prioritize climate finance. Zimbabwe is committed to keeping the temperature rise below 1.5 degrees by doing our part in cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 40% before 2030. Greater progress would be made on our climate goals if it were not for the illegal economic sanctions imposed on our country, still imposed on our country, for sins committed by a long past government. We demand the immediate lifting of these sanctions, of these unwarranted sanctions, which is why we are co-signing an amendment with our friends of the Russian Federation to lift them in hopes of providing the necessary tools for Zimbabwe to fight this climate crisis. We call for the developed nations of the world to take greater responsibility for their predominant role in global warming. So many examples of unnecessary pollution by the developed world are seen every day. Countless train derailments causing tons of hazardous chemicals to be spilled into the atmosphere. New builds such as the Willow Project, which is putting the equivalent of 2 million gas-powered cars onto the road. How is it fair that we sit back with sanctions crippling our economy, facing the uneven burden of climate disasters, while others thrive and get away with committing these acts? We as developing nations are watching, and we refuse to turn a blind eye to these acts. Most African nations, like our neighbors South Africa and our friends Nigeria, are battling the same issues, so it is of Zimbabwe's belief that we must unite as one continent and speak as one voice. Our stance must be firm, and we must refuse to leave here today without a solution. I thank you.
The chair would now like to recognize the representative of Denmark, followed by the representative of the People's Republic of China.
Esteemed judges, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the Kingdom of Denmark firmly believes that decisive and immediate action must be taken to combat the dangers of climate change, and we are fully committed to being a leader in global climate action. As such, we have set a goal to drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 70% and achieve climate neutrality by 2050. While we acknowledge that achieving this objective is a challenge, we have already made significant strides towards our goal. We have implemented a range of policies and initiatives to get to a reduction of 60%. Nevertheless, there is still much work to be done, but with our determination, knowledge, expertise, and cooperation with other nations and stakeholders, we will achieve our target while still being able to facilitate a just transition. We also recognize that the impacts of climate change are not distributed evenly across the world. Developing nations in particular have contributed the least to global emissions, but suffer the most severe impacts of climate change. We believe that this is fundamentally unjust, and we are committed to doing our part to address this inequity. Additionally, as a kingdom that includes Greenland, a country with the second largest ice sheet in the world, we have witnessed firsthand the catastrophic effects of climate change on not just our environment, but also our people. Just last year, in 2022, a surge in melting caused an ice sheet to release an astonishing 6.7 billion tons of water every day, for 3 consecutive days. To put this into perspective, this amount of water could flood the entire area of Barbados with 6.2 feet of water. The indigenous population was hit particularly hard by the rapidly shifting geography of their land, and it forced them to relocate from their traditional homes to the capital city. Denmark provided assistance to these communities, but we recognize that many developing nations do not have the same resources to do the same for their own people. This is why Denmark has taken the bold step of becoming the world's first nation to create a compensation fund for developing nations dealing with the effects of climate change. The money encompasses the losses and damage caused by sudden catastrophes as well as slow onset events. We believe that this is a crucial step in addressing the injustices of climate change and ensuring that those who are most affected by it receive the support they need. Denmark has and will always continue to support vulnerable communities affected by climate change, and we call upon the international community to do the same, because the fight against climate change is not just an environmental issue, but a moral imperative that requires global action. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the People's Republic of China.
Gewei Dai Biao Hezil Huban He Tongshinmen. Welshunghao. Today we are all here gathered in Parliament in a time of uncertainty with one big goal in mind: saving our planet. We are here standing at a period in time where the necessity for our help is dire. Over the years, China has been criticized for being the world's biggest carbon emitter. But now we are taking steps for the betterment of our planet. We have set the ambitious goal to become carbon neutral by 2060. To achieve this, we are investing heavily in renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power, as well as in energy efficiency measures. We are also investing in electric vehicles and other green technologies. All of this making us the biggest investor in renewable energy. Our main exports include electronics, machinery, textiles, and apparel. Our main imports include oil, iron, ore, and other raw materials. We are also a major importer of food, including grains, fruits, and vegetables, many of which are impacted by climate change. We are spending heavily on infrastructure, including roads, railways, and airports, as well as investing in renewable energy sources, as previously mentioned. We are facing a number of challenges, both domestically and internationally. Domestically, China is facing a slowing economy and environmental degradation, as are many other countries. However, we expect your collaboration and demand that the international community supports our agenda by providing access to markets, technology, and capital. We also ask that you stand by our 5 principles: mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. This is because although China is approaching a phase where we will be fully capable of being self-sufficient, we find that it is still very important for us and for other nations to maintain good relationships. We will also work together to achieve our global goal. Despite our major setbacks, we will take the initiative to establish a Kunming Biodiversity Fund and take the lead by investing 1.5 billion yuan to support biodiversity protection in developing countries. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We must step up to the stairs, because we can talk forever about what we aim to achieve, but what we aim to achieve in the future, but the action starts now. Shit.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair would now like to recognize the representative of the United Arab Emirates, followed by the Togolese Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, and the Republic of Chile.
Chairpersons, fellow delegates, and honored guests, good morning. The world faces two urgent crises demanding our immediate attention: climate change and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The evidence is overwhelming that the effects of climate change are being felt internationally. The UAE, like many other countries, has been greatly affected by a recent climate change disaster. In 2020, we experienced our hottest summer on record, with temperatures reaching 50 degrees Celsius, which has brought our agricultural sector to the brink of destruction, as farmers have been struggling to keep their crops alive in the face of the extreme heat. That is why, despite being a major oil-producing country, the UAE recognizes the importance of mitigating climate change. We are one of the first major oil-producing countries to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, thus becoming a non-Annex I country, and so we are not legally obligated to reduce our emissions in accordance with the UNFCCC. Nevertheless, we are committed to a sustainable future, with our goals to net zero emissions by 2050, expanding the role of low-carbon technologies, and investing in renewable energy. However, we believe that collaboration is crucial to overcome this challenge. We must work together to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy and promote sustainability, because we owe it to ourselves, our citizens, and future generations to leave a sustainable and peaceful planet. In light of this, colleagues, we must turn our attention to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The UAE is deeply concerned about the escalating tensions and the human suffering caused by this crisis. War, bloodshed, and destruction are counterintuitive to our mission. Let us not lose sight of the fact that we share this planet and we must protect it and its people. We believe that dialogue and diplomacy are the only solutions for conflict, and in our efforts to mediate and steer this negotiation down that path, we are pleased to announce that 4 out of the 12 peace plan points have been agreed upon by the parties involved in the war. We invite all member states to join us in Dubai from November to December of this year, as we are hosting the 28th Conference of Parties. Let us unite to push for global action on climate change and hold each other accountable to fulfill our commitments. We urge the international community to exercise restraint and meaningful dialogue to resolve the conflict swiftly, keeping in mind that our main objective is neutralizing climate change. Together, let us build a better world for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The chair now recognizes the representative of the Togolese Republic.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, bonjour à tous. I am not here to tell you all the sad stories from my country, as we all have them, and share the pain climate change has put on every one of us. Instead, I'll tell you what my country plans to do to combat this. The Togolese Republic recognizes the severity of climate change and its potential to cause irreparable damage to our planet. We strongly believe that urgent action is required to mitigate the impacts of climate change and adapt to its effects, particularly for vulnerable countries like ours. We support the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, which seek to limit global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We recognize that the implementation of the Paris Agreement requires strong international cooperation, as well as the mobilization of financial resources and technological transfer to support developing countries in their efforts to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. My country is committed to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions and has set a target of reducing emissions by 30% by 2030. We are also implementing measures to promote sustainable development, including the use of renewable energy and the promotion of sustainable agriculture and forest management. We recognize that climate change adaptation is equally important, and we are taking steps to enhance our resilience to the impacts of climate change, such as increased droughts and flooding. As a small island developing state, even though it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to make these changes and to truly impact the world, we, the Republic of Togo, will try our best. For us to reach these goals, we will need some help from bigger countries and banks. As said in the Bridgetown Initiative, funds allocated to us will be used to expand our economy and provide emergency liquidity in case of a catastrophic event. In conclusion, the Republic of Togo calls for urgent and collective action to address climate change, and we stand ready to collaborate with other countries and international organizations to achieve our common goal of a sustainable future for all. Merci de votre attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair would now like to recognize the representative of the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Esteemed ministers, honored guests, and delegates, it is with a heavy heart that I stand before you today to address the issue of climate change and the effect it brings to our country. One of the most brutal effects of climate change in our country are the floods it's causing. The magnitude of destruction and loss of life caused by these floods is immense, and the images of people losing their loved ones, homes, and livelihoods are heartbreaking. As a nation, we are no strangers to natural disasters, but the recent floods have left us all in a state of shock and mourning. We have lost fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, friends, and neighbors, individuals whose lives were full of promise and potential. Furthermore, the floods have ravaged entire communities, leaving behind a trail of broken homes, shattered dreams, and ruined futures. Children who once had a roof over their heads and food on their plates are now homeless, hungry, and in need of urgent assistance. While floods are becoming more frequent and more impactful, we also have seen an increase in droughts in our country. The impacts of climate change are being felt across different sectors of our economy. For instance, our agriculture sector, which is critical to our country's economic growth, is facing serious threats. Droughts are becoming more frequent, and this is leading to lower crop yields and reduced productivity, leaving farmers struggling to make ends meet. The tourism industry is also feeling the brunt of climate change, with rising sea levels and coastal erosion posing significant threats to our beaches and natural reserves. This not only impacts our economy, but also the livelihoods of people who depend on tourism-related jobs. The effects of climate change on our health are also significant. Extreme heat waves are becoming more common, putting vulnerable groups such as the elderly and sick at risk of heat stroke and other heat-related illnesses. The air quality in our cities is also deteriorating, leading to increased respiratory problems. As hosts of COP27, we are working tirelessly to achieve the goals set out in the agreement. However, we recognize that as a developing nation, we cannot achieve this alone. We urgently call upon the developed countries to support us in our efforts to limit global temperature rise. Egypt will benefit significantly from financial support and green technologies to quicken the deployment of clean energy technologies and improve energy efficiency. This will help to mitigate the rising air pollution levels that are severely impacting our nation. It is important to recognize that developing countries are the most affected by climate change, and we must work together to achieve our common goal. Providing financial support to prioritize climate change sustainability and green technologies is vital to ensuring the prosperity of developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Chair now recognizes the representative of the Republic of Chile.
Fellow delegates, honorable chairs, esteemed guests, good morning. If we have changed the world, we must not adapt and change it ourselves. What excuse do we have to offer our countrymen? After our agreement in Paris, what progress have we made? The race against climate change is a ticking time bomb that we must defuse if we are to make an impact. The Republic of Chile, like our fellow developing nations ranging from Samoa to Zimbabwe, are particularly vulnerable to the disastrous effects of climate change. The IPCC outlined the great task of needing to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius back in 2018. Years, though, later, increasing emissions of greenhouse gases are even more daunting to tackle this issue. Climate resilient development is our only sustainable pathway to fight this problem. Chile has pledged to reduce the intensity of its CO2 emissions by at least 30% by 2030, locally producing 70% of its power by 2050, and reforesting 100,000 hectares of primarily native forests. We have also launched a net zero emissions policy in the energy sector, as our government aspires to balance its greenhouse gas emissions through carbon capture and storage. In addition, a carbon tax has been implemented in order to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. This tax applies to all fuels, whether it be natural gas, diesel, or gasoline. As our major polluters, we intend to introduce green hydrogen into the country's mining and commodity sectors, as well as all carbon-reliant local supply chains. Chile has also created a hydraulic resource policy that commits to increasing investment in the ecosystem services in order to maintain water basins that sustain areas with hydroelectric generation potential. Furthermore, we are effectively implementing a solar roof program and have established initiatives to encourage end users to install solar rooftops, which may boost system adaptation in the face of climate disasters. Coastal erosion is a serious and developing concern in Chile. Infrastructure damage along the Catalan coast, for example, has increased by 40% in the last 50 years. Sea level rise, increased storm surge, and coastal flooding are projected to be increasingly catastrophic to Chile, particularly in low-lying coastal regions that may disappear entirely. As we close out today, our world as we know it is vanishing before our eyes. Today, in order to secure our futures, we must reach an agreement on sustainable long-term policies. As we debate amongst ourselves, the majority of our citizens cannot envision a secure future. We can no longer ignore humanity's pleas for a collaborative effort to solve these problems. A UN-backed initiative aimed at improving climate resilience through renewable energy and conservation measures is our lifeline to pull us out of disaster. We cannot leave this decade asking our future leaders to bear our weight. This is a global battle. We must try harder. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for your presentations. This assembly now stands at recess for 1 hour.